Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 3. On today's episode, we are going to dive into the layered realities of transracial adoption through the lived experience of a white father who raised two Black sons. And one of those sons is joining him and me in the conversation today. They are going to unpack the love, challenges, cultural tensions, and racial truths that shape their family across generations of Black history marked by resistance, identity, and survival. This is an honest conversation about what it means to build a family across race in a world shaped by systematic racism, microaggressions, and the ongoing struggle for Black dignity and freedom. So, welcome to the podcast, Steve Mann, the father, and Jeffrey Mann, the son. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so where in the world are you, Steve, and where in the world are you, Jeffrey?
Well, I'm in St. George, Utah, which is down in the southern part, very close to Las Vegas,
Okay.
where it's warm.
Yeah.
About 4 hours south of where Jeff is.
Okay.
And I am in American Fork, Utah, about 30 minutes south of Salt Lake City. And I am the area where it's cold and snows on the mountains, and we're ready for winter.
All right. I can see the positives in both of those. Okay, first of all, let me just start out by saying thank you both for doing this podcast. Number one, you're my first father-son duo that I've ever had on the podcast. So history breaking. But just the fact that both of you are willing to come on and talk about what could be a divisive subject and what has been a divisive subject. I just want to thank you personally for coming on and telling your story to me and to my community. So I appreciate you both so much for that.
Thank you.
Here.
Okay, so my first question, this is for both of you, and Steve, you can go first with your answer. What were some of your first memories or impressions of becoming a family across racial lines?
Well, I think the first discussion I had about it was when my wife and I got married, and just kind of dreaming of the future, we thought, wouldn't it be great to have a multicultural family at some point? And we got busy and had a few kids and then moved back to Idaho. And there happened to be a family there in our neighborhood who had adopted kids from all over. And our youngest of 4 was already 6. But my wife came home and said, remember when we had this discussion? Would you still be open to doing that? Mm-hmm. I said, sure, let's go ahead. So we started the process of adoption.
Okay, and Jeff, what about you? What was your first memories or impressions of becoming a family across racial lines?
Honestly, for me, really as a kid, I probably didn't notice it until probably we went to get our first haircut and went to a regular hair salon, and she struggled to cut our hair. And I remember she had shaved half of my brother's afro off, and then she started crying, and I can't do this, and just the struggle there. And we were lucky enough; we had a friend um, who was Black. The dad was Black, the mom was white. The dad had played in the NFL, and we went to school with him. And so the dad was able to introduce us to a barbershop and what it meant to go into that space and to actually get an actual haircut and feel the confidence that that brings. And so for me, that was probably the first initial experience of that for me.
Were you able to get your haircut, Jeffrey, or did y'all leave after kind of her breakdown?
We left after the breakdown. You know, they used to do the old from like Family Matters. They used to do the part, cut the part in the hair and try and do that look and everything. And we had the polos back in the day, and So yeah, that was probably the first initial experience.
Okay.
Along with that, I
Mhm.
remember once we had gone to Atlanta, where Jeff's brother was born,
Mhm.
and we took them both back to their birthplaces at different times. And we went into a traditional black barber shop with about 6 barbers, and it was all set up. They were so thrilled. They wanted to go back to Atlanta just to go to the barber shop.
The space in a barber shop or beauty shop is like a thing of beauty. It really,
Yep. Yeah.
It is.
it really is. Okay, so Steve, what made you and your wife decide to adopt Black boys specifically?
Well, we were not specifically looking for black because our understanding at the time was
Mhm.
that white people couldn't adopt black children. And I think that had been the case. And when we were talking to our caseworker, because we were older, and she said, "Well, would you be willing to take some hardship cases?" I said, "Well, what does that mean?"
Mhm.
She said, "Well, with people of color." I said, "We don't care what color they are. A kid's a kid." She said, "Oh, well, there are a whole bunch of black children who are available because we don't have places to place them. And if you'd be
Okay.
up for that," I said, "Absolutely, we're up for that. No question."
Jeff, do you remember what it was like? I mean, I know you had your kind of the first memory in the barber shop. What do you remember about entering a family where you were, I don't know if you were, was Steve, was Jeff the first Black son you adopted or was he the second?
He was a first, but
Okay.
they're only 2 weeks apart. In
Oh,
fact,
okay.
they were born on the same day in different parts of the country.
Okay.
Three hours apart.
Wow. I feel like it was meant to be.
So do we.
Okay, so Jeff, what do you remember about being within this white family as a Black boy?
I think for me initially, what I remember most is I think my parents did a really good job of trying to um, integrate us with the Black culture. And my
Mhm.
mom started volunteering in school, in elementary school, and coming to class and trying to support Black history and Martin Luther King Day. And they did a good job of bringing over other minority kids over to the house to create a sense of belonging. So initially, as a kid, that's what I probably experienced and saw. One of the things with my life is I lived 7 years of my life over in Africa, and so also had the chance. To go to other countries where people look like me. But then that brought the dynamic of, okay, they may look like me, but I can't speak their language. I don't understand their culture. And so for me, that was a complete paradigm shift.
So, Steve, it seems like to me, based on what Jeff is saying, that you and your wife were very intentional about incorporating Black kids, being a part of Black history, bringing Jeffrey to predominantly African countries. Why was that? And when did you start making those intentions?
I think it's interesting to say Jeff asked, as you asked that question to Jeff,
Mhm.
when did you start feeling that? And he didn't really. And I'm happy about that because for
Yes.
us, he was a kid and we wanted him to be a kid. We didn't want him to be black or white, particularly, but we wanted him to expose him to people who were the same color. And so he learned more about that. And we just started very early on that. I had way long before been a race relations counselor in the
Hmm.
military. And so I was pretty familiar with Black history, American history. And there weren't a lot of Black people in the Boise area where
Yeah.
we were when this happened. In fact, just a quick story. We were going through the adoption process, and partway, we said to the counselor, said, "Look, there aren't many Black people around here, and we're a little older to be adopting. Uh, what if we got two? She said, well, you can't do that. And I said, so we appealed that decision. And they said,
Mhm.
no, you can't do that. So I don't know whether it was arrogance or hope or revelation, but we went out and bought a double stroller and two cribs. And sure enough, we got, when all the paperwork was done, we got a call from an agency in Atlanta, and they said, we've got a little boy here for you. I said, great, terrific. The very next day, we got the call from Washington, we got a little boy here for you. Well, now we have three different agencies, and it seemed like a million calls later, but they finally all agreed and let us go ahead and get these two boys.
Did you and your wife have pushback, Steve, bringing in two Black boys into your family? Because, I mean, if we're being honest, during that time, I don't know if people were that friendly and open to transracial adoption.
I think most people, they were just more questioning, what are you doing adopting at your age and getting two more kids? There wasn't really a lot of discussion about color.
Yes.
And I think most of the community kind of rallied around us. And it wasn't until later some of them would start telling us stories about how prejudiced their grandfather had been or their father had been and how they didn't understand that. But I think for the most part, the community was very, very supportive.
Jeff, as an adult now, do you feel like there were certain parts of Black culture, Black history that you had to learn because of the transracial adoption?
It's interesting. I think initially it was learning, what black grooming standards, what's good to for haircuts, for even shaving, getting shaving rash, and figuring out, how do you cope with
Right.
things like that. But then understanding that, despite whether I'm black, who is Jeff? What type of person am I going to be in society? And am I going to, follow society norms, or I'm going to learn to be myself? And for me, luckily, I have been blessed to be able to travel the world and see a lot of cultures and meet a lot of different people, and that has helped shape the way that I view, I guess, black culture. Um, the other thing was also, growing up learning, you have black culture, you also have black culture that's in Africa. And so you have African Americans, you have Africans, and even, the simple thing of, walking by another person of color, do you give them the head nod? Do you not? Where are they from? And so just picking up little cues and stuff like that. A lot of it came from the people that we met, people I met at the barbershop. Um, Being big in sports, being able to meet a lot of people that way, has helped. Later on in my life, a few years ago, I spent about 5 or 6 years actually helping run a transracial adoption camp out of Denver, Colorado. Kids from Africa, the Caribbean, and being able to participate in that. And so that for me was kind of a full circle moment of being able to help kids where I started, help them be able to kind of figure things out early.
Jeff, you and your father, Steve, have spoke about your travels outside of the country. Where are some of the places you traveled, and what did that mean to you that your parents were really intentional about putting you in those places?
I think for me initially, my dad was looking to just help others. And so to be in a space where we went over to Africa to do humanitarian work, to just to help people and to serve people. And so for me, going myself, I was able to go and serve a Christian mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and spent 2 years in West Africa myself, out there. And then in return, I kind of set this thing where I wanted to go and see all the wonders of the world with my dad. And so I was able right before the pandemic to take him over to India to go and see the Taj Mahal, and just even to see the culture over there, and how different was there. And I remember when you go on those things with those agencies you book trips with, they plan your stuff and
Right.
activities, and they want to take you to all the tourist spots. And one of the things my dad and I did is we wanted to make sure that we said, hey, we just want to go see a village. We just want to go walk amongst the people and do that. And it took a little back and forth and pushing and prodding, but finally we were able to, detour from the planned route and to go out and to see a village and stuff. And so for me, I think it's been a big part of my life.
Steve, were there certain aspects of Black culture, Black community that you had to learn because you did have two Black sons?
Because of my studies in the background, I probably knew about as much book learning as you could have as probably most Black people, because it had been an area of study. What I didn't know how to do, I didn't know how to cut black hair. I didn't know how to talk to him about shaving. I did know how to talk about some of the things that they might expect. And unfortunately, some of that happened. But we really tried to have the focus be on them as individuals, not them as Black individuals. And there are really far more differences between my two Black sons than between them and their siblings. They're just very, very different personalities. And so our focus was really on them and their personality more than their color.
How did your four other children, I'm trying to think how to ask this question. How did they receive whenever you and your wife brought home two new sons?
They were excited. We have two babies. How much fun can that be? Yeah. And one of their sisters, Haley, was practically a second mother. And so, for our other kids, that's just how life was. And
so it was just normal.
Yeah. We had some funny things happen. My wife would get all the cousins together, usually before Christmas. And there were a lot of cousins their age. And one time, one of the cousins come up and says, Jenny, and Jenny was like 5 or 6. She said, is it true that Hunter and Morgan are adopted? And she says, well, have you noticed they're a different color? So what? What? They did not compute that. For them, they were just their cousins. They didn't see color or race, and I'm thrilled with that.
Absolutely.
And but not everybody's a cousin. But the extended family just absolutely adopted them. It was almost embarrassing sometimes because my dad would have pictures of the boys in his wallet, and we'd be at a gas station, and if he saw a Black man or a Black woman, he'd go over there and say, want to see my grandchildren?
Yeah.
And he was just so proud of those boys.
Yes. Okay, so this is for both of you, Steve and Jeff. Can you recall a moment when racism or microaggressions or both directly shaped your family's experience together? We'll start with you, Jeff.
I think a few things. I mean, growing up, I remember a few times. My brother had just got a brand new Mustang, and in high school, and we were driving home, and we had cops follow us into the neighborhood and follow us home, and our dad came outside, and I think that was one initial experience. I think my dad tells about, I think, being at the mall and seeing security people follow us around in the stores. Those them not knowing, those are our parents, um, but those were a few initial experiences.
I had some great lessons from Black friends, because when things like that would happen, my initial reaction was anger. Wait a minute, these are my boys. You can't. And they would say, Steve, you got to back off. You can't get mad at everything that happens. You can't go get a lawyer every time somebody does something, because it's going to happen all the time. So you need to learn how to deal with it and how to deal with it gracefully. And so that's probably been more of my struggle as things happen, is not turning over to anger and responding in ways that would have exacerbated the situation.
So, Steve, how did you learn to, I guess, deal with that in a gracious way instead of with anger, instead of wanting to get a lawyer every time something like those things happen?
I'm still learning.
I think we all are. I think we all are.
When I see prejudiced, not just with blacks, but with anyone, it makes me angry. I just don't understand how we can do that in this day and age. And so, but I've had enough experience that I don't just attack. I tend to ask questions. Well, why do you say that? What's been your experience? What happened? And when you start asking questions, you get, I think, more realistic responses.
Okay. Steve, how did you, because I know within the Black community, one of the things that we talk about all the times is having to talk with your children about your interactions with police. Did you have this conversation with your sons?
Jeff, I don't think we ever had a formal conversation. It wasn't a sit down, let's talk about this.
Okay.
I think as we would hear about things and see some things, we would talk about them. Just, this happened. What do you think about that? What's your memory of that, Jeff?
I think it's just the stuff that we learned in school, and just conversations. As if stuff would come up, then we would have conversations, or if we'd ask questions, we'd have conversations. But that's probably what I remember most.
Okay. Did you, as a family or maybe individually, have conversations about the KKK, about lynching, about anti-Black violence, about America's original sin of slavery?
I think as they got older and they were in history classes, or they would be watching things on television, that would lead to discussions. Okay. And sometimes those were fairly lengthy discussions, but it was back and forth. It wasn't like we had set a time, we're going to talk about this. It was when things would happen. At least that's my memory. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the same thing.
Jeff, whenever you were growing up, did you feel the need, and I'm not sure, maybe as a teenager, did you feel the need to have to tell friends or girlfriends that, hey, my parents are white? Was that part of your conversation?
Wait, sorry, Crystal, can you repeat that real quick? I think you're breaking up on
Yes,
my
absolutely.
end.
As you were growing up, maybe around teenage years, did you feel the need to have to tell friends or significant others that your parents were white? Was that part of your conversation?
I don't.
Uh-oh.
For me, when I was in high school, I went to high school my junior and senior year in a small farm town, and so there were some conversations there when going to pick up girls for dances that were white, because I was Black, and so that's where initially probably I had that most
Yes.
either concerns or conversation.
Okay. And what did that conversation look like or sound like?
I think it was more of just a trying to get on a comfort level, because you could tell there were some families that may not have liked me or understood me. Luckily enough, a lot of the families did know my family, and so that helped. But it was just something for me. It was just something new and different.
Okay. This next
Jeff,
question is, oh, go ahead, Steve.
in the time we lived in Zimbabwe,
Hmm.
they were going to, or in South Africa for that matter, they were going to boys' schools.
Okay.
And
All boys schools.
that's how all the schools are there.
Oh, okay.
And when they were high school age, their school is kind of part probably majority black and then part Afrikaans or English white and part Indian.
Hmm.
And so what kind of discussions went on? This is Westville Boys High out of Durban. What kind of discussions went on there, Jeff? Or did
I
they?
think I think at that school it was interesting because we went to an all boys school where the majority was white students. And
Hmm.
so initially going into that school, because I played sports, I clicked with the white kids. My brother clicked with the black kids, and it was very much so separated. The white kids were over here, the black kids were on, the other side. And so initially it was, if there was issues, it would be between the race groups at the school. And then, it was the conversation of, hey, we had to take language classes, but we didn't understand any of the languages. And so we ended up taking the Afrikaans, which is the class most of the white kids took, just for the sole purpose of it was easier than the native languages they have to learn and
Okay.
pick up. And so it was just the conversations of you dealing with different cultures, now you're dealing with different foods, and then, just how people communicate. And then you throw on top of that, I tell people it is very much like Harry Potter. We got to the school, they put you into a house, you were in uniforms, you had to respect the older kids. It was a whole hierarchy.
Did you feel more at ease and more at peace in Africa? Or do you feel more at ease and more at peace, Jeff, here in America?
I think the last 2 years that I lived in Africa, I probably felt more at peace just because I had picked up the languages. I had just blended in with the people. I had spent about a year or more in one area. And so there was just a level of being comfortable and knowing all the people and knowing how to get to A to B and, the right foods to eat and everything. And so that's what I would say. Flash forward to today, I live in a state that is predominantly white and in an area that's predominantly white. And so for me, having built a little bit of a base and a following and people knowing who I am has allowed me to become, I guess, more comfortable.
Okay. So it's safe to assume that both of you are in agreement with transracial adoption, correct?
Correct.
Obviously, correct. Okay. So, Steve, what would you say specifically to white parents adopting black children? What advice would you give them?
Well, when we started the process of adoption, we read all the books about adoption, period,
Hmm.
and difficulties that go with that. And we read whatever we could find about transracial adoption. And it used to kind of, I would be perturbed some kind when couples who were not able to have children, I say, well, why don't you adopt? And they say, well, you don't know what you're going to get.
Hmm.
I say, well, like you know what you're going to get when you have your own children.
That's
Each one's different. And
yeah.
I kind of say, what are you thinking? And I guess I felt kind of that same way about color. A kid is a kid, and they need to be loved and taught and parented. And and I think it just enriches you as a family if you have the opportunity to have kids of different color or different ethnic backgrounds.
And
And so I encourage it.
Jeff, what would you say to black children growing up with white parents? What advice would you give?
I would say it's we're blessed right now with social media and the tools that we have, and so as black kids growing up, as you're growing up, look for people that may look like you, look for
Hmm.
people that have the recipes and follow them, lean into them. I would suggest, it's good to find a Black mentor, someone that you can ask questions, someone that can give you feedback, someone that can challenge you and push you. And so that's what I would say. And then, last thing I would say is just, it's okay, just be you. There's no reason to have to worry about trying to be something that society is trying to make you be. Just be comfortable being you. I always say right now in my life to people that I am who I am. Who I'm not, I'll never be. And that's something that I've leaned into and focused on, because this is how God has created me.
Did the two of you, Steve and Jeff, have to do any healing, any self reflection, or maybe together? Because Steve, you are a white father, because Jeff, you are a Black son. And, maybe it could just be the dynamics of father and son outside of the racial lens.
Yeah, I think we have had some healing to do, but I think that had far more to do with personality than it did with race. That would be my take on it. Jeff?
I Yeah, I I would agree with you.
Okay. Now, as we get ready to close, what do the two of you, your future for your relationship as you continue? And I assume, as a Black woman, that navigating race is always going to be a factor, especially in America. So, what does that look like for the two of you as you both, age and grow, navigating race, adulthood, and family? What does that look like?
Dad, I'll let you go first.
It's kind of hard for me to distinguish that because that's just been our lives.
Hmm.
I think we have never approached it as how are we going to navigate this because of our color. We have looked at how do we prepare our kids to deal with other cultures and other races. And we've tried to expose them to that and have discussions about that. But I think that's important for everybody, whether they have uh, adopted kids or kids from a different race or not. Uh, we've been really fortunate to live around the world and meet people of all kinds of beliefs and ethnicities. And my wife and I have had long held beliefs in equality. And we have tried to transmit that to our own children, Black and white.
Hmm.
And so I think I think it's a matter of in going forward. There's some things going forward now I worry about. I worry about some of the things that are going on in the country. It seems like we've made a lot of progress in the last, 50 years. When I was a kid, it was a civil rights movement going on. Uh, that was a long time ago. People don't remember that anymore, and we have made a lot of progress from that time. I hope we're not starting to backtrack.
I sure hope not as well, Steve. And I feel like, I mean, even though it was 50 years ago, I feel like that was not a long time ago at all. Jeff,
I
what
do
about
too.
you? Yeah, yeah. What about you? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings as, you age with navigating race, adulthood, and family?
I think for me, I'm at a place where I've founded my own company. I have my house. I kind of have where I want to plant my roots and everything. And so for the next chapter for me is to find my person and start a family and have kids and be able to grow in the area that I am and within the community that I live in. And so for me, it's just about continuing to work on myself to make sure that I'm the best person possible, so that when, I find my person, that I have already, worked on myself, and hopefully she's worked on herself. And spent that time to become the best person possible so that I'm able to be knowledgeable and to be able to teach future kids the lessons they need to know in terms of dealing with race in society. And the beautiful thing is, as I've gotten older, there's more and more people on TV, on shows, in society that look like me, and so that's an exciting thing.
One of the things, and I have hopefully one more question for the two of you, then I'll let you go. One of the things that, as you were speaking, Jeff, about the shows, is that show, This Is Us, where you have the family with the white mother and father that adopt the black child, which I forgot his name was Randall on the show. But a lot of the things that we discussed, they showed in real time in that show. That TV show is not on anymore, but I think that is the first time on national television that I can remember seeing, and I could be wrong on this, that I can remember seeing a white family adopt a black child. I do remember another show. I cannot think of the name of it, but the catchphrase was, "What you talking about, Willis?" I forgot the name of that show, but it was the same thing with the black father and the black sons. So, because the world is becoming more inclusive, I feel like shows like that need to be more included on national television because it shows what America is starting to look like.
Yes, and that was Different Strokes.
Different strokes.
Yes, I
Thank
got you.
you. That was going to
Of
kill
course.
me, Jeffrey. As soon as I got off this podcast, I was going to Google that to look at what
Oh,
that
I know.
was.
I was like,
Different
which show
strokes.
is that? I got
Yeah.
you.
Okay. So those are the only two that I can remember that showed transracial adoption, different strokes. And then several years later, This Is Us showed that as well. And both of those shows were written so beautifully. I just think that it needs to be done more. So as we get ready to wrap up here, Steve and Jeff, of course, we are in America and not everyone is in such agreement with transracial adoption. So, what do you say to people that push back and say perhaps white people should not adopt black children or black people should not adopt white children? What do you say to that? We'll start with you, Steve.
I guess what I say is you need to look at people, not color. And there are black parents who are probably far better black parents than I am. And I would not at all mind. You know, I think a kid needs a parent, and a parent needs a kid. And that they need to try to put aside those things of color and ethnicity and just look at a human being. I've really had the opportunity to live all over the world and do things all over the world. And if it's one thing I've learned is that we are 98, 99% absolutely the same. Do we
Yes.
have a different skin color? Is our hair different? Do we eat different things? Yeah, so what? We have the same beliefs. We have the same concerns. We have the same issues. We have the same hopes and for our kids and the same fears. And we need to focus on our sameness and how we can make a contribution to somebody else, not some slight difference that we imagine.
Absolutely. And Jeff, the final word?
I think I would just say is, everybody deserves a chance in this world. Everyone deserves a home. And so for me, I think we need to get away to um, those walls that society puts up, those norms that society tries to dictate, and really lean into who we are as a people and caring for people for who they are and not what they look like or what they may believe or, what religion or sexual orientation they may have. We just need to look at people for who they are and, judge them by their acts and their merits. And so for me, I always say, transracial adoption is a good thing, and I think everybody on both sides, it just comes down to educating yourself and being willing to learn, but also in the end is being willing to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And when you can be in that state, then I think it can be a success for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on to my podcast and sharing your story and sharing. For me, what I walk away with is just like you said, Steve, regardless of race, family is family and love is love at the end of the day. And I think both of you have shown that beautifully and described that beautifully on this podcast. So thank you both so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and the only thing I would add to that, Crystal, is we can all be enriched by the differences, and we need to look at that, not how to separate.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Steve. And that is the perfect way to end this podcast. So, again, thank you both for coming on. And to my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Steve and Jeff's podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.